Tang Mo opened his eyes with surprise. It was a vast forest. The sky was a scary blue, like it had been smeared with blue paint. A few marshmallow-like white clouds floated on the horizon. They looked like they had been made with a drawing tool and were painted one by one. The world was divided into the sky and the earth. The stout trunks pointed straight up at the sky, with no forked branches being seen. Tang Mo was startled as he stood in this fairy-tale-like forest. He soon calmed down and started to observe the surroundings. The trees here were very tall. The smallest trunk had a diameter of 78 meters. However, the flowers and plants were of a normal size. Tang Mo carefully avoided every flower, in case stepping on it would make a clear sound. He was wearing a pair of soft-soled sneakers and made almost no sound as he stepped on the moist soil. 5 minutes later, Tang Mo returned to his original point and checked what he was carrying with him. The backpack contained 2 bags of cookies, a bottle of water, a flashlight, a lighter, and rope. Tang Mo's right leg had 2 small knives tied to them and 4 small darts were hidden in the inner pocket of his jacket. After checking everything, Tang Mo started to move forward. It had been 10 minutes since he entered the Black Tower's first floor. Unlike the last time when he was pulled in by Fu Wenduo, Tang Mo didn't receive his main mission. Other than the Black Tower's message that welcomed him to the monster world, nothing else was said. 10 minutes later, the Black Tower still hadn't released any games or tasks. Tang Mo couldn't sit still. He looked around warily, chose a direction and walked straight in that direction. It was the easiest way to get lost in this type of forest. Tang Mo hadn't prepared a compass since no one knew if a compass would have an effect in this world. Tang Mo's choice was to find the most obvious landmark and head there, so that at least he wouldn't circle around. The tall trees blocked the sun, making it impossible to rely on the sun for directions. But in the midst of the dense foliage, a knife-like peak stood straight. The mountain was like a kitchen knife. It was extremely thin but also extremely steep. A white layer of snow and ice condensed on the top of the mountain. Tang Mo used the mountain as his direction and planned to get out of the forest first. He walked for 1 hour. The knife-like peak was still far away and the bottom of the mountain was completely invisible. The trees in the forest looked exactly the same. Every 10 minutes, Tang Mo would find 10 pebbles and place them in the shape of a cross. In this 1 hour, Tang Mo hadn't come across any cross shapes that he put down. I haven't gone around but I still haven't walked out of this forest. Tang Mo's lips tightened as he sped up, wanting to find a way out of this forest. As Tang Mo was walking past a tall redwood tree, his ears moved as if he heard a sound. Tang Mo stopped immediately. He leaned against the redwood tree and focused on listening to the strange sound. He listened for 10 seconds. Apart from the sound of birdsong and the rustling of leaves, there seemed to be nothing else. Tang Mo carried his bag as his eyes narrowed. He leaned down, placed his hands on the ground, rested his ear against the ground and continued to listen. Slowly, he heard a strange sound. Boom. Boom. Boom boom. Boom boom boom. The sound became more frantic, as if someone was pounding on drums, the thumping sound knocking at Tang Mo's heart. The sound was getting closer. Tang Mo jumped up from the ground, turned around and ran. He didn't care about stepping on leaves and making a sound. He just focused on escaping at his fastest speed. However, the source of the sound was faster than him. 3 minutes later, a white flash flew through the sky and landed in front of Tang Mo. Tang Mo's eyes narrowed. Hiss, hiss, a huge rabbit 3 meters tall stopped in front of Tang Mo, staring at him with bright red eyes. Its giant paws clawed at the ground and a soft-sized piece of soil was easily thrown to the rear, smashing against a huge tree and making a loud noise. Tang Mo slowly backed away, not blinking as he stared at the white rabbit. One man and one rabbit stood between thick trees and looked at each other. The next moment, the big rabbit's strong hind legs moved in a beautiful arc through the air towards Tang Mo. Tang Mo didn't hesitate to take out the big match from his wrist. He moved sideways to avoid the impact of the big rabbit while hitting the rabbit's back with the match. The match hit the fluffy rabbit's fur and sparks flew. The rabbit fur seemed soft but it was as hard as steel. The rabbit was pushed back by Tang Mo's match and slid 10 meters along the ground. Tang Mo was slammed into a giant tree but the huge rebound shock. He almost coughed up blood and barely swallowed it back down. The man and rabbit stared at each other across the distance of more than 10 meters before meeting again. The white rabbit wasn't clumsy because of its large size. It was extremely fast and formed phantoms in the air. Tang Mo was continuously forced to retreat. He blocked the rabbit's paws with a large match and was finally forced to a dead corner of a tree. There was a giant tree 10 meters in diameter behind Tang Mo and thick bushes to the right and left. He didn't hesitate to turn and run into the bushes. The big rabbit hurried to catch up. But then it saw that Tang Mo wasn't trying to run away. Tang Mo stood in the bushes with his hands on his hips. He glared at the rabbit and shouted, "Return my grandfather." "My grandfather, grandfather, father," a loud male voice echoed in the vast forest. Tang Mo opened his mouth and his lips made a rounded shape. The big rabbit's ears pricked as if it knew something was wrong. It turned and ran. The next second, a hot gas emerged from Tang Mo's mouth, followed by a hot fire. The flames were sprayed on the flammable bushes, which immediately ignited. The ability Goblin, Return my grandfather could only be used once a day. In order to use it, he needed to put his hands on his hips and shout "Return my grandfather." Then he could spray out flames at 800 degrees Celsius for 30 seconds. Tang Mo sprayed flames for 30 seconds in an uncontrollable manner. Once he finished using the ability, the rabbit had disappeared and his surroundings had become an endless sea of flames. Tang Mo picked up the backpack that was thrown in the corner and ran away. Tang Mo hadn't wanted to use this ability in the forest at all unless as a last resort. The forest was rich in vegetation and once a fire occurred, it couldn't be controlled at all. The big rabbit was driven away but Tang Mo had to hurriedly flee as well. He also took a detour so his 1-hour walk before was wasted. The forest fire burned fiercely. Tang Mo ran dozens of kilometers. In the distance, he could see the fire that he had set. Giant trees were collapsing in the flames. The forest fire was spread at a faster rate, leaving less time for Tang Mo. He was running forward wildly when a child's voice was heard in his ears. Ding dong. Triggered branch quest 1, disguise as Little Red Riding Hood and enter the Monster Valley. Tang Mo's expression slightly changed. He wasn't able to respond to the meaning of this sentence when he heard a surprised shout. Oh my god, a fire. The monster forest is on fire. How can it suddenly catch on fire? I will go find the elephant grandfather in order to extinguish it. There was the sound of many footsteps coming closer. Listening to the footsteps, there should be at least 20 people. Tang Mo was only 100 meters away when he heard their voices. It was impossible for Tang Mo to run away. It was an emergency, so Tang Mo climbed up a big tree and used the leaves to block his body. 5 seconds later, Tang Mo's heart suddenly stopped. He finally saw the things talking. They weren't humans but animals. Or were they monsters? The leader was a big man with a gorilla head. He had the head of a gorilla and the body of a human. He was dressed in a black vest and carried a room-sized tank of water in both hands as he ran towards the forest fire. There was a pig-headed man, monkey-headed man, and giant snake crawling around with a water pipe with him. Some only had the head of an animal while some had the bodies of animals. Tang Mo held his breath as he clung to the big tree. He heard his heart thump, but the only thing he could do now was reduce his sense of existence as much as possible and pray that the monsters didn't find him. Suddenly, a person with a dog head stopped and his nose sniffed twice. Then he looked up at the leaves hiding Tang Mo. Tang Mo became numb. His hand grabbed the small dart in his pocket but he didn't throw it. He just listened as the dog-headed man cried out, an underground person. There is an underground person. All the monsters stopped and simultaneously looked at Tang Mo. Catch the underground person. Capture him. Tang Mo crouched on the trunk and borrowed the force to jump to another tree. 2 giant monkey monsters climbed up the tree in order to catch Tang Mo. There was no time for Tang Mo to hesitate. He kept jumping through the tress with 2 monkeys behind him while the group of monsters followed on the ground. Damn. Shouldn't they be putting out the fire first? For the first time, Tang Mo wanted to curse. He could only think it in his heart. He didn't even have time to speak as he jumped to the next tree. The forest fire burned fiercer and was about to reach the big tree to the side of Tang Mo. However, the group of monsters were still behind Tang Mo. Their eyes were a bloody red while the 2 giant monkeys were dripping saliva from their sharp teeth as they stared at Tang Mo. Tang Mo's physical strength was naturally inferior to the monkeys who were masters of climbing trees. His arm was caught by a monkey and the other monkey took the opportunity to hang upside down from a tree to grab Tang Mo's arms. The big match appears in Tang Mo's palm. He didn't waste any effort to wield the big match and hit the monkey's chest. The monkey was hit by him and flew back, but before that, he kicked Tang Mo's chest. Tang Mo's body fell and smashed into the ground. In the next second, he was surrounded by monsters. An underground person. The orangutan said while swallowing. I haven't seen a fresh underground person for a long time. The pig-headed man's eyes shone as he looked at Tang Mo. Can we eat it? Eat? Eat the underground person. Eat it. Tang Mo's brain moved quickly as he thought about the abilities and weapons he had now. The big match didn't work. The match was a good weapon but Tang Mo couldn't beat so many monsters by himself or escape. He could only curse a target with draw a circle to curse you and the effect was unknown. He had also used the return my grandfather ability. It was the only one that could threaten this group of monsters. There was also the ability to find the player type, spit out wind, defensive ability. Tang Mo's expression became uglier. His abilities couldn't deal with so many monsters. Should he save this point first? Save the game as soon as he entered. Damn, what if there was danger in the future? He had just entered the tower attack game and didn't even know the main mission. Main mission. There was a flash in Tang Mo's brain and he suddenly remembered that before his moment of crisis, the Black Tower had issued a branch mission. He hadn't had time to think about the mission while escaping. It was impossible for the Black Tower to not give him a way to live. Tang Mo didn't miss anything since entering the game. He remembered every one of his actions and there were no mistakes or clues that he missed. He used the Return My Grandfather ability when dealing with the White Rabbit as a last resort. If it wasn't used at the time then Tang Mo certainly wouldn't have gone through the Big Rabbit. Then only. He pulled a beautiful ruby out of his pocket and raised it to his head. Suddenly, a smelly hat appeared on Tang Mo's head and he felt something grow under his nose. Tang Mo suppressed the desire to vomit and spat out some words. I am Little Red Riding Hood. The monsters were surprised. Little Red Riding Hood. Who is Little Red Riding Hood? Have you ever heard of Little Red Riding Hood? Tang Mo was surrounded by these monsters. He lowered his head and hid his expression under Mario's stinking hat. It was the only possibility that he could think of now. The Black Tower wouldn't give him a deadly situation without any solutions. Otherwise, this wouldn't be a game. But if Little Red Riding Hood didn't work or if Mario's hat couldn't disguise him as Little Red Riding Hood, Tang Mo could only use the save function and then desperately fight the monsters. Maybe the Black Tower was bad to this degree and wanted him to use the archiving egg. Ah, I remember. Isn't the grandmother's mixed daughter called Little Red Riding Hood? A parrot said slyly. Do you remember grandmother's daughter? She eloped with an underground person 10 years ago and gave birth to a mixed breed. The grandmother told me yesterday that her granddaughter is especially filial. The granddaughter must have come from the underground world to see her. Right? The giant gorilla pointed to the beard on Tang Mo's face. He is a male, not a female. Tang Mo tore off Mario's mustache in an expressionless manner and rose from the ground. You saw wrong. The gorilla touched his head. Ah, I saw wrongly. You are the grandmother's Little Red Riding Hood. Why didn't you say it earlier? Hey, the rest of you go and put out the fire. Little Red Riding Hood, I will take you to your grandmother. The gorilla turned to escort Tang Mo. There was a burning pain under Tang Mo's nose. With his current body, his skin wasn't torn when he ripped off the mustache. But this type of pain wasn't any less than what he would have felt before the earth went online. The gorilla asked, Little Red Riding Hood, why are you so stinky? Tang Mo replied coldly. Us underground people don't like bathing. The gorilla nodded. It is no wonder that below your nose was so dirty. Us monsters love bathing. You shouldn't learn from the underground people. Tang Mo touched his face and didn't speak. The gorilla led Tang Mo through this maze-like forest and it took them only half an hour to reach a valley. The valley was in the complete opposite direction of the mountain that Tang Mo saw before. The gorilla accompanied Tang Mo to the village and said to him, "You are a really sensible little Red Riding Hood. The crop season is almost here. This is the busiest time, but you actually came to help your grandmother." Tang Mo stood half a meter away from the gorilla and hummed. The gorilla said, "In the last 2 years, the Monster Valley hasn't been very peaceful." The gorilla pushed away a boulder and a burrow appeared in front of Tang Mo. The gorilla stepped in while Tang Mo froze. The gorilla looked back at him curiously. Little Red Riding Hood. Sneak into the Monster Valley was heard in Tang Mo's mind. He finally gritted his teeth and followed the gorilla into this hole. The boulder closed behind Tang Mo. Ding dong. Branch Mission 1 has been completed. The gorilla picked up a torch placed beside the boulder and illuminated the burrow. Tang Mo followed the gorilla as they walked deeper into the tunnel. The tunnel was very spacious and looked more like a huge cavern. Black stalactites were at the top of the tunnel and small beads of water drops formed on their tip. Tang Mo leisurely followed behind the gorilla as they got deeper and deeper underground. After 10 minutes, the tunnel came to an end and the gorilla pushed away the big stone at the end of the tunnel. Suddenly, everything was cheerful. Tang Mo looked at the vast space hidden beneath the ground with wide eyes. This underground belongs to the first floor of the Black Tower. The gorilla sighed. "I feel uncomfortable every time I go above. Hey Little Red Riding Hood, how could you be in the forest that is the junction to the second floor?" Tang Mo hummed but didn't reply. The gorilla didn't speak again as they entered the valley. Before he saw this valley, he would never believe that there was such a huge world underneath the ground. The valley was surrounded by 3 pyramid-shaped underground hills. In the center was a clear pink river. The river entered one end of the valley and disappeared out the other end. Between the 3 hills were houses covered with thatch and mud. From far to near, there were more than 20 small houses visible to the naked eye. There was also a vegetable field in front of each house. At the moment, the vegetable fields were bare. The ground had been plowed but there were no crops. There was no one in the valley. It was estimated they went to put out the fire. The gorilla led Tang Mo to the depths of the last hill. Tang Mo walked slower, his hand on the match tattoo as he stared cautiously in front of him. A pink chimney stuck out from the hill and appeared in front of them. The gorilla pointed to the chimney. "Do you see it? That is your grandmother's house." Tang Mo nodded while touching the match tattoo. The gorilla couldn't recognize Little Red Riding Hood but her grandmother wasn't necessarily the same. Tang Mo entered the Monster Valley in accordance with the requirements of the Black Tower. He vaguely noticed that the key to attacking the tower, or the main mission, should be in this valley. If the grandmother didn't recognize him as Little Red Riding Hood, the only option for Tang Mo was to immediately flee and hide in a corner of the valley, looking for opportunities to complete the main mission. After turning this corner, Grandma's house was in full view. A pink mud hut was situated between 2 very green trees in an abrupt manner. A golden fence encircled the vegetable field in front of the hut. In the middle of the vegetable field, a mirror-like stone was inlaid on the ground. A stone road was paved from courtyard to house. The gorilla knocked on the door. "Grandmother, grandmother, I brought your Little Red Riding Hood." Tang Mo was tense and highly focused as he prepared to run away. At this time, he heard muffled footsteps. It was as if a giant was dragging their feet along the ground. Every step shook the mountain. Creak. The pink door was pushed open. Tang Mo's right foot turned as he prepared to flee. A huge human animal wearing a white hat and a pink dress appeared at the door. She had strong muscles and had to stoop down to get out of the hut. The pink dress was strained on her, as if a muscular man was wearing a girl's dress. It was extremely ridiculous. Her face was covered by the huge hat and Tang Mo could only see hairy hands. She stepped like a lady from the upper class as she exited the house. Tang Mo's 1.8-meter height only reached her shoulder. She slowly pushed up the brim of her hat, revealing a prominent mouth and the eyes of a wolf. The gorilla smiled. "Grandmother Wolf, I brought your Little Red Riding Hood to you." Tang Mo had turned to flee the moment he saw the wolf. However, the wolf grandmother's thick palm pressed on his shoulder. Tang Mo was horrified to find that he couldn't break free. Just pressing down like this made him unable to move. "This is my Little Red Riding Hood. I will never forget her father's stinky hat." "Uncle Gorilla, you don't know how stinky her father's hat is. Look, it is a bit better than her." Grandmother Wolf opened her bloody mouth and smiled slightly. Tang Mo saw a human finger between her teeth. Grandmother Wolf directly pulled Tang Mo's arm and brought him into her yard. "My cute Little Red Riding Hood must be hungry. Grandmother will take you home for dinner." The giant wolf dragged Tang Mo into the house with one paw and slammed the door shut. Outside the head, the gorilla scratched his head. "Grandmother is good-tempered today." He turned and walked down the hill. Tang Mo was taken into the house by Grandmother Wolf. Once the door closed, Grandmother Wolf directly threw him. Tang Mo turned 2 times and landed by the fireplace. He stood up awkwardly but Grandmother Wolf no longer cared about him. She strode to the fireplace and grabbed the withered human arm. The 2 small clothes were ripped by the grandmother's rough actions. Grandmother Wolf cursed and tore off the dress, throwing it into the fireplace and burning it. "Take off your damn hat." Grandmother Wolf chewed on the wrist. "This stinky hat is the same as your father's. Don't think I will give you anything good. In these 7 days, you will only get 7 copper coins." Tang Mo relaxed when he heard this. A keyword flashed through his mind, 7 days. Tang Mo didn't want to wear this hat. But the moment he took it off, Grandmother Wolf looked at him viciously and snapped the arm she was eating at the elbow. The hair of an underground person is really the most disgusting thing in the world. Put your hat back on and don't let me see that hair again. Or else I will pull it out of your head. Tang Mo, Grandmother Wolf chewed all the meat, spat out the bone and looked at Tang Mo. Tang Mo wore the hat again and tore off the mustache that grew back. Grandmother Wolf glared at him before going back to eating her dinner. The pink room was full of pink furniture. This room was small and the small table was covered with fust. Tang Mo visually observed that the table hadn't been touched for at least 1 month. Perhaps the owner preferred to eat food on the ground. Underneath the sofa was a rug made of a pink fur that Tang Mo had never seen before. His eyes moved around the room before finally landed on the fireplace. His gaze moved upwards and looked at the head hanging over the fireplace. It was like every deer head set on the wall above the fireplace. However, this was a human head that had been stuffed and hung. The slightly curled black hair draped over the man's face. The middle-aged man had his eyes closed and mouth opened as if he had fallen asleep on the wall, except for the fact that his face was pale and bloodless like a corpse. Tang Mo glanced at it before turning away. Grandmother Wolf finally finished eating the arm and threw the remaining bone residue into the fireplace. The flames spluttered and the pungent smell of bones burning filled the hut. Don't think that I prepared dinner for you. Grandmother Wolf wiped her bloody mouth with her hand. 7 copper coins is already giving you a big reward. From tomorrow, you will catch a golden hamster for me. If I don't see the golden hamster when I return 7 days later, Tang Mo gazed coldly at the werewolf in front of him. Grandmother Wolf smiled, revealing the still unfinished finger stuck in her teeth. You will be my dinner. Bang. The room shook as Grandmother Wolf exited the room and forcibly closed the bedroom door. Soon, Tang Mo heard a thunderous snoring sound. Tang Mo started to walk around the room. He examined every table, chair, and even the human hair hidden in the seams of the sofa. This house was no different from an ordinary human's hut, apart from the fact that a human head and not a beast was hanging above the fireplace. Tang Mo couldn't lie under a human head to sleep. He walked to the table with his bag and lay on the floor. Tang Mo stared up at the ceiling of the pink hut and remembered everything that happened after he entered the first floor of the Black Tower. The first floor of the Black Tower was underground and the forest was the junction between the first floor and the second floor. The gorilla, giant monkeys, Grandmother Wolf, Little Red Riding Hood. Little Red Riding Hood was here to see her Grandmother Wolf. 7 copper coins, 7 days. The mission was for 7 days? Tang Mo clearly understood that he wasn't Grandmother Wolf's opponent. All he could do was wait for the main mission to appear. The Black Tower would surely issue the main mission. Tang Mo stared at the ceiling with his eyes open and thought about it all night. At noon the next day, a loud noise was heard from Grandmother Wolf's bedroom. When Grandmother Wolf came out, she was wearing a pink lace skirt. The strong body was wrapped in a small skirt that seemed like it could explode at any time. She twisted and shuffled as she moved to the entrance of the hut. Tang Mo didn't want to look. Grandmother Wolf picked up a pink umbrella and placed a black hand on the door handle. Suddenly, she turned to look at Tang Mo. Do you know how to catch that disgusting golden hamster? Tang Mo was silent for a moment. I don't know. Your mother didn't even teach you this? Damn, it is up to me to teach everything. Then I will only give you 6 copper, no. It is 5 copper and no a single one more. Grandmother Wolf dropped the umbrella and headed to Tang Mo. She picked up a pink jar and threw it towards Tang Mo. 7 days later, it is the season of sowing. I heard that the head of the circus got an interesting treasure and I have to go and see. I will be going to see it for 7 days. Meanwhile, you should take a good look at the land at the back of the hill. Grandmother Wolf walked to the window and Tang Mo followed. Through the window, Tang Mo saw a more extensive vegetable garden. The dark soil had already been turned over and was ready for sowing. The vegetable field was located at the foot of the hill. Tang Mo's eyes flashed as he saw 9 big holes in the all of the hill. Those damn hamsters dug the holes again. Grandmother Wolf gritted her teeth. Today is the first day. Every day at 6 o'clock, you have to put food in one of the holes and then hide in the hole. Once the golden hamster comes out to eat the food, catch it quickly. Tang Mo immediately understood that this was his task. Can I put it in any hole? There are 9 holes. Grandmother Wolf replied righteously. Of course. As soon as you'll place the food in that hole and stand there, the stupid golden hamster will think you are feeding it. The golden hamster likes you underground people the most. As long as you and the food are standing in a hole, it will trust you. Of course, there is only an 80% probability that it will appear. There is a 20% probability that the black hamster will appear. Tang Mo frowned and asked, what is the black hamster? The black hamster most likes to eat you underground people. Grandmother Wolf smiled maliciously. They rip off the heads of the underground people and dip it in fresh tomato sauce. Oh. It is the most delicious thing in the world. But I don't recommend you to catch the golden hamster on the first day. This is the season where the hamsters have finished hibernation and are going out to eat. The golden hamsters are lazier than the black hamsters and love to sleep for a while. A black hamster will often appear on the first day. There is at least a 50% probability. Tang Mo stored these words in his heart and asked, where do I get food for the golden hamster? Grandmother Wolf stared at Tang Mo with a strange expression. The jar in your hand? If you put anything that belongs to your kingdom in there, you will receive the favorite sweet potato of the golden hamster. God knows why the stupid golden hamster likes you underground people so much. Sweet potatoes can't be compared to delicious fresh meat of the underground people. Grandmother Wolf swallowed her saliva as she stared at Tang Mo's body. Tang Mo already had a rough idea of the mission. He asked a final question. Can I catch a golden hamster in 7 days? Certainly. But if I don't see the golden hamster when I come back in 7 days, Grandmother Wolf smiled and picked up her umbrella, opening the door and leaving the house. The sound of her voice filled with emotions was heard through the door. The meat of the underground people, then there was a loud voice. Ding dong. The main mission, the Monster Valley's Happy Hamster game, has been triggered. The rules of the game: first, there is only one golden hamster in the Monster Valley. Second, there are a total of 9 holes. Third, the 24 hours in a day is the same in the monster world as it is on Earth. Fourth, put anything that belongs to the underground kingdom into the pink jar and you can get the sweet potato that is the favorite of the golden hamster. This food must be placed in the hole at 6 o'clock or it will be invalid. Fifth, whenever the player and the sweet potato is present at the same hole, there is an 80% probability of a golden hamster appearing and a 20% probability of a black hamster. On the first day, the probability of the golden hamster appearing is 40% and the black hamster is 60%. Seventh, players can only place food at one's hole every day. Placing it at 2 or more holes, or the player and food not being present at the same hole means the probability of the golden hamster appearing is 0%. Eighth, before the sowing, the hamsters are only active in the holes. Grandmother Wolf plants crops once a year and the hateful golden hamster always steals them. Grandmother Wolf had a headache wondering how to catch it until she suddenly thought that perhaps her lovely granddaughter would have a way. The author has something to say, Tang Tang, I feel that I am still too weak. That grandmother wolf can bully me. Gorilla, pig, and all the monsters in Monster Valley, she can also bully us QAQ.